For years, buying a used car followed a familiar pattern. A new vehicle would leave the dealership, lose a significant portion of its value in the first few years, and eventually become an affordable option for someone looking to avoid the cost of buying new. It was one of the most predictable markets in the economy, built on depreciation, supply, and consumer demand. Then something unusual happened. Millions of Americans began noticing that vehicles with tens of thousands of miles were selling for prices that seemed almost identical to brand new models, while cars that should have been getting cheaper were instead becoming more expensive. What looked like a temporary disruption slowly revealed something much larger about how modern markets function when supply chains, consumer psychology, and economic incentives all collide. To understand why the used car market changed so dramatically, it helps to begin with a simple observation. Cars are not just transportation, they are durable assets with constantly changing values. Unlike groceries or fuel, a vehicle can remain useful for many years, meaning the total number of available cars depends not only on current production, but also on how many older vehicles remain on the road. Under normal conditions, manufacturers produce enough new vehicles each year to replace aging ones while expanding the overall supply. As new cars enter the market, older cars move into the used market, creating a continuous cycle that keeps prices relatively stable. That balance depends on one important assumption: new vehicles must continue flowing into the system. When that flow slows down, every stage of the market begins to feel the effects. During the early years of the pandemic, factories around the world reduced production, shipping networks experienced delays, and one small but essential component became unexpectedly scarce: semiconductor chips. Modern vehicles rely on dozens of electronic systems, from engine management to safety features, and without those chips, manufacturers simply could not complete enough vehicles to meet demand. Imagine a market that normally produces 16 million new vehicles in a year suddenly producing several million fewer. Those missing vehicles do not simply disappear from consumer demand. The people who would have purchased new cars begin shopping for nearly new cars instead. Buyers who would have chosen a 3-year-old vehicle now compete for 5-year-old vehicles, while buyers searching for older, lower-cost transportation face increased competition as well. Instead of one market experiencing pressure, the entire chain becomes compressed. This is where psychology becomes just as important as mathematics. When people hear that prices are rising and inventory is limited, many begin making decisions based not only on current needs, but also on expectations about the future. Someone who might normally wait another year to replace a vehicle may decide to buy immediately, fearing that prices will climb even higher. At the same time, current owners become less willing to sell because replacing their existing vehicle has become more expensive. Fewer sellers combined with more buyers creates exactly the kind of imbalance that pushes prices upward. The numbers illustrate how powerful these forces can become. Imagine a city with 100,000 buyers looking for used vehicles and 100,000 vehicles available. Competition remains relatively balanced because most buyers can eventually find something within their budget. Now imagine the available inventory falls by 20% while demand stays almost unchanged. Suddenly, 80,000 vehicles must satisfy 100,000 buyers. Even though the reduction seems relatively modest, thousands of buyers are now competing directly for the same limited inventory, allowing sellers to command higher prices. Another factor often overlooked is how financing changes consumer behavior. Monthly payments tend to feel more tangible than total purchase prices. If interest rates are low, buyers may focus primarily on whether they can manage the monthly payment rather than whether the underlying vehicle has become unusually expensive. This can temporarily support higher prices because affordability is measured in installments rather than total cost. When interest rates later rise, however, the same vehicle becomes significantly more expensive each month, reducing demand and gradually changing market dynamics again. Rental car companies also played an unexpected role. Many sold large portions of their fleets during periods of reduced travel. As travel recovered, those companies needed to rebuild their inventories quickly, competing directly with everyday consumers for both new and used vehicles. Institutional buyers entering an already constrained market placed additional upward pressure on prices. Over time, production gradually improved, shipping delays eased, and inventories slowly began recovering. Yet markets rarely returned to their previous state overnight. Consumers who became accustomed to elevated prices adjusted their expectations, dealerships adapted their pricing strategies, and manufacturers recognized that producing fewer vehicles while maintaining higher profit margins could sometimes be more financially attractive than maximizing volume alone. The result is a market that still reflects many of the lessons learned during those years of disruption. The used car market is ultimately a reminder that prices are rarely determined by a single event. They emerge from countless interactions between supply, demand, incentives, expectations, financing conditions, and human behavior. A shortage of components became a shortage of vehicles. A shortage of vehicles became increased competition, and increased competition reshaped prices across an entire industry. Understanding that chain of cause and effect makes the dramatic changes seem far less mysterious. They were not the product of one isolated problem, but the predictable outcome of interconnected systems responding to extraordinary pressure.